Welcome to the Ladies Who Leverage podcast, where we empower women to own their power, create influence and impact, and live life unapologetically AF. It's time to leverage your expertise, resources, and relationships to build your business, brand, and badassery. So just click subscribe and let's get it. I'm your host, Kelly Charles Collins. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Ladies Who Leverage podcast. And listen, today I have a special surprise for you because we have been doing this podcast since February of 2021, and you've only heard female voices. So today I have Dr. Randall Bell here with me, and he has the honor of being the first male guest on the Ladies Who Leverage podcast. Woo! And I think you all will find it very interesting because after I read his bio, I think you're going to say, Kelly, why is this man on your podcast? Like, what does this have to do with anything? But I cannot wait for you to understand why I really wanted him to be on here. So let me give you a little bit about his background. So Dr. Randall Bell, as a socioeconomist, Dr. Bell has consulted on more disasters on Earth than anyone in history, including the Flight 93 crash site, the BP oil spill, Hurricane Katrina, and the nuclear testing at Bikini Atoll. Often called the master of disaster, Dr. Bell is a frequent guest of the media and has been profiled in the Wall Street Journal, People magazine, the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, Los Angeles Times, CNN, World News Tonight with Diane Sawyer, 2020, Entertainment Tonight, and by newscasters on every major television network. And now he can add Ladies Who Leverage podcast. And Dr. Bell also stars in the TV miniseries Distressed Real Estate, which is available on Amazon Prime and Apple TV. Dr. Bell, or Randall, can I call you Randall?
Please do, Kelly.
I am so excited to have you here. So welcome to the Ladies Who Leverage podcast.
Thanks, Kelly. It really is an honor to be with you. I don't know which is a bigger honor, when I was on the Today Show or this podcast as the first token male, but it's an honor to be here.
Well, just take it as I always say, when I'm the only one in a room, I always think, okay, am I spokesperson, token, or expert, right? And I generally decide that if I'm the only one there, then I'm the expert. So, take expert. But as I said, like listening to your bio, it probably is, creating some kind of dissonance for people. Like, why is he on here? Because we're always talking about, women's empowerment and, how to educate women around entrepreneurship. The reason that I have Dr. Bell here is because Dr. Bell has a book called Me, We, Do, Be. And when your publicist sent me the information, generally I'm like, when, I get all things male, right? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not, I'm not putting male guests on my show. And there was something about it, and I was reading it, and I could immediately see how Me, We, Do, Be could apply to, the women in our audience. And so I do want you to give a little bit of your background though, because, and tell us how we got here, because Me, We, Do, Be is a framework that you've developed, and it came out of all of, the amazing stories and things that you've been able to experience that come from all of these horrible disasters.
Yeah, well, Kelly, the journey's been kind of interesting. Long story short, I grew up here in Southern California, and I started off as an economist measuring disasters. I worked on the World Trade Center, and we just had a case that settled for $1.8 billion last week.
Wow.
So these are big, complex, messy cases. You're an attorney. You understand the complexity that these things can get into. And I wanted to kind of break it down, because at the end of the day, my job is to take boxes of information and convey that to a jury. And juries are very smart, but they may be postal workers, they may be car mechanics, they may be doctors or lawyers. It's a mix, but you've got to make sense. And that's rule number one. And Me, We, Do, Be is kind of the the way I try to explain things in terms of putting together a game plan or a business plan, a strategic plan, which we all need, whether we're working on big disasters or little crises or big ones. Me is our mindset. We is our relationships, how we connect with other people. Do is getting the work done, being productive, and B is what we're becoming. It's our legacy. It's the purpose of it all. If it follows a nice kind of simple format, and that's how it kind of came to be, was working on these big disasters, but trying to convey it in a way that made sense to folks.
Yeah. And as you said that, right, just giving that little breakdown, that is the thing that immediately struck me. And I could see where in our lives all of that would fit in. And it's funny because when I was reading your bio and thinking about the disasters, and in the beginning of the book, you talk about how those disasters help you to come up with this. And I was like, how? Right? Like, how does, being in the midst of Katrina or, the Flight 93 crash site, or, how does any of that create this framework for you? So what was it about being in those spaces and experiencing those things that you were able to really distill it down to these 4 cornerstones?
Well, the way I approach these cases, I wrote a big, thick textbook which puts you to sleep, on how to calculate damages on a large scale. And so, but people think that I might show up with all the answers and barking out orders, that kind of thing. That's not how it works. When I show up at a site, I'm actually very quiet on purpose. I'm trying to be observant. That's the me phase, where I'm just assessing the situation. Because everything's different, and there's every disaster. I don't know how to explain it better than to say it. There's kind of a vibe. I'm trying to get that vibe of what's going on. Is this a cooperative community? Is this a community in chaos, or something in between? So the me stage is where I literally sit on the curb in the aftermath of the World Trade Center crisis, which I worked on. And just try to absorb what's going on. And oftentimes there's a lot of grief. It's an ugly situation, but that's the me stage. We is after I assess and observe and get my mindset right, then on the we side, I don't come out saying anything or being professorial or dictatorial or anything like that. It's more asking questions, connecting with people, getting the questions asked and answered, and then getting to work with do. And then B is, having my eye on the final outcome we want to have here, which can be any number of things.
Yeah. And so I want to break them down a little bit more. And I looked at everything that you in the book, and there were some things that stood out for me in terms of all of the different areas, the me, we, do, and be. And one of the things that you talked about when you were talking about me, is this whole concept of the full glass theory when you were talking about working with homeless people. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that, and where does that fit in terms of me and mindset?
Well, when I learn a lot from working with the homeless center here in Laguna Beach, and also I volunteer up at San Quentin Prison in the Orange County jail system, and I learn a lot from the individuals that are in those places, because they don't have sugar-coated approaches. They got to get real results. And the full glass theory is something I started teaching the homeless folks, and that's to say, you got a glass, and it's let's say it's 24 ounces, and there's 24 hours in a day, and let's say the glass is full of ugly pollution looking stuff. Okay. My approach is to say, I don't care what stuff you got in your class. I don't want to go through your story. We all got a story. I got a story. We all, we got a story. I got that. Process that with the psychologist on Wednesdays. But we're here to talk about strategies for moving forward. My approach is to start filling in that glass with good new habits. And the bad stuff will naturally displace without any effort. If we take whatever their story is and start pouring in exercise and going to the library and reading books and going down to the beach and meditating and all the healthy habits that are discussed throughout that book, the bad stuff will naturally go away. That's the whole point of the full glass theory.
And I could see how in business or just in life in general, how that applies, right? Because so often we focus on all of the bad, and then we hear, it takes 21 days or 30 days or however many days to form a new habit. And one of the things that I loved about your book, when at the end, when you talk about the habits, was do one thing. Right. And so as you're talking about this full glass, and everyone has all of their whatever we have, right, in our background, and all of the drama and the trauma. If we try to displace all of that, or to replace all of that in one fell swoop, disaster, right?
Yeah. There was a guy in the homeless shelter. I talk about him in the book, but he was there I taught the classes on Sundays. He was there every single Sunday for months. And finally the lights went on, and he got energized, and he says, okay, Dr. Bell, I'm going to start doing 50 push-ups a day, and I'm going to do the meditation for an hour at the beach, and I'm going to go to the library and read. And he started listing this enormous list that I appreciated his optimism, but I thought, to set that up as a goal, you're going to fail. I didn't say that to him, but I said, that's all terrific, but let's just pick one habit. And he says, okay, push-ups. I'm going to do 50 push-ups a day. And I said, you know what? Just do 5 push-ups a day. And if you want to do 45 more, go for it. But just commit to me and to yourself, more importantly, and to the class, that you're going to do 5 push-ups a day. And the next week he came back and he says, Dr. Bell, I kind of feel bad. On average, I did 15 push-ups. I said, that is awesome. You did 3 times more than your commitment. That is awesome. And the next week he came back and he said, Dr. Bell, I did an average of 25. And every week it got better. And then the next week he got to 50. And the next week he started doing the meditation on the beach, the grounding exercises, deep breathing. And then he started going to the library. And then one day I was in the homeless shelter. True story. I was there on something else. I was at the administrative office. He came up to me and he gave me a big hug. He says, Dr. Bell, I'm going to miss you. And I thought, what happened here? Because sometimes the police come and take these people away for various reasons. And he says, I've got a job. I've graduated. I've reconnected with my family. True story. That's how it really works. And seeing human behavior, that's what I'm trying to convey in the work, how we really put together a strategic plan that once and for all really works.
Yeah. And you're talking my language when you talk about strategic plans, because what I just heard you talk about is what I talk about with the women and ladies who leverage. And also when I am mentoring or helping, is thinking about what that big vision is, and then reverse engineering and breaking it down into the little bite-sized pieces that you can accomplish. And I love what you said about, just commit to doing this. If you do more, great, that's icing on the cake, but at least commit to doing a smaller thing that you can accomplish, because once we accomplish, right, then we get all of these great feelings about it. And you talked about the high, right? And you talk about the helper's high, but you get these good feelings, and we all like those good feelings. And when we get that good feeling, it allows us to go do something else, right? To continue doing something else, which is all part of like our success journey. And that's something that you talk about, building these solid foundations, and how the me, we, do, be, that all of those cornerstones are important. And you talk about the ultimate goal is not to become a success in terms of accumulating power, prestige, or more stuff, but rather, as Albert Einstein said, to become a person of value. And when I read the story about that particular homeless person, I thought about that in terms of he started to become a person of value, right? Somebody who was doing these things, doing his push-ups and then going to the library and meditating. Because he was internalizing all that and becoming somebody of value in this me stage, right? It allowed him to move forward and move out of that homeless shelter. I want to make sure that, these are my interpretations and my connections that I've made from, and I want to make sure that, I'm on the right track.
Well, Kelly, you're exactly right on track. And this is stuff that we're never done learning. Unfortunately, I got COVID in January, and I don't want to be dramatic, but it was a bad case where I went to sleep at night and wasn't sure I was going to wake up.
Wow.
And then for 3 or 4 months, I couldn't, my goal, honestly, was to get out of bed and get a glass of water for the day. And then 2 weeks later, it was to take a walk around the backyard. It was that bad. And I had to do the same things myself, where I just didn't bite off the whole apple, but I gradually did these little daily habits. I set little, can-do goals. And today I'm off. And the doctors put me on 5 meds. I won't bore you with all that. But today I'm back to running 5 miles a day and I'm off all the meds. But it didn't happen overnight. There was a nice gradual approach that, frankly, I learned from folks like who we just talked about.
Yeah. And the other thing that you talk about in terms of habits is the triggers, rituals, and buzz, or trigger cue, ritual routine, and the buzz reward. Talk to the audience about what you mean by that, because I think that's also very important knowledge for us to have so that we can start to track. I mean, I train people on unconscious bias when I'm when I'm not doing the podcast. Yeah. And the thing that I explain to them is unconscious bias is outside of our awareness. But once you become aware that you have certain biases, then all of a sudden, you start to see things, you can reflect. And I thought about that in terms of this, like when you're talking about a habit, what's triggering us? What's the ritual? And what is the buzz that you get from having, either completed that habit, or changing that habit?
Yeah, well, I tell the folks at the homeless shelter, and everybody gets a good laugh at them. I say, I'm here to teach you how to all get high, and they all look at me like, and it's like, there are counterfeit ways of getting high. I think we all know what those are, but they're legitimate ways of getting high. We all want to get high. And so, Kelly, I'll give you an example. I walked into the office one day and my PR person said, you know what? An NFL star is quoting your book and talking about how now he's making his bed every morning and how that puts him in a productive mindset. Well, he gets it because that cycle of how habits work. And I make my bed every morning because, the simple act of a daily ritual or habit secretes endorphins and neurotransmitters that feel really good and starts your day off with that. Hey, I'm productive. I feel good. I'm kind of doing it. And if you load up with too many habits, you don't do them and then you feel bad. So you don't want to do that. But there's just a simple habit of making your bed in the morning. Believe it or not, I've surveyed over 5,000 people in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK, all the English-speaking major countries, and asked questions where I basically statistically correlated daily habits with various measures of success, whether it's financial or emotional, all kinds of measures of success. It's all in the book. And so this stuff is based in real science. It's not anecdotal stuff I made up. It's based in real science, but that's an example of how it works. Is just doing little things such as making your bed get you off to a great feeling and a great start to the day.
Yeah. And then you'll continue to do it, right? It's that whole thing about the high and wanting to, because what we want to do is recreate that. Right. And so, and that's why people get addicted. And so I love that you talk about really reframing in your brain what that high is, right? And that it's about being the helper. And so one of the other things I so many things in your book, but one of the things you talk about is that it doesn't mean you were talking about purpose, right? And attaching purpose to, who we are and the me part of us, the manifestation part of us. And you said that, it doesn't mean that a person with a clear purpose and core values will not stumble along the way. Setbacks are inevitable, but people traveling with strong core values know that problems are just opportunities in disguise and see setbacks as valuable lessons. While sure of their mission, they're always open to learning more and improving on the past. And that really struck me too, because I'm, again, always talking about purpose. And that's why I knew that when I read about you, I was like, we are so aligned in so many ways around what we're, how we think and how things show up in the world and how we show up in the world. And so why is that important? Why is it important that somebody when we're talking about this me phase, that you have a clear purpose and that you have these core values that you stick to and make sure that they're in alignment?
Well, it's like if you're a pilot and you're going somewhere, and if you're just 2 or 3 degrees off, you're going to end up, in a completely wrong place. You gotta have a north star, and that is our purpose. Those are our values. And that is what really drives us. Just yesterday morning, I had breakfast with a guy I met in San Quentin, and he was paroled after 22 years. And he just graduated from college with honors. And I'll be the first to tell you, I didn't graduate with honors. He's finishing his master's in May, and now he's going on to a PhD. This guy has a purpose, and he's using the lessons he learned going through the mass incarceration of the United States and those issues to help others who were in tough childhoods and process that trauma from all of that. That's an example of the power of purpose. He would be the first to tell you that purpose is essential to give us that North Star. So we're going to something. Otherwise, we just kind of wander all over the place. Wandering can be fine for a while, but overall, we want to have a clear destination.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say that purpose is the thing that brings you back and directs you, right? And so whenever you feel yourself going over here and going over there, it's that thing that just calls you back, like come back to center. It's that, it's your guiding center. So now I want to transition and move us on to the we part of it, because the me is about us, right? Manifesting. And then the we is about relationships, which so many of us, right? We're entrepreneurs, we're business people, whatever it is. And we think about success, as we just talked about, we think about our lives, but we can't do it alone. And so it requires us to have relationships. So talk about we and explain to them what the we cornerstone is.
Well, to do that, I might point out there's a term out there, sympathetic resonance. And what it means is if you ring a bell or an instrument in a room full of instruments, if you hit a chord, other instruments will start vibrating that are tuned into the same frequency. Now, there's 7 or 8 billion people on the planet, and we can't connect with everybody, that's for sure. But we can connect with the right people that have the same frequency. The me is about setting up our frequency, so we know who we are, we have our purpose. Then, and when we move into we, our vibe will naturally attract people with the same vibe, and when we hit a chord, people will sense it. If you put a bunch of people in the room together, after a while, you'll notice all the funny people are together telling jokes. The gossipers are together talking about, gossip. And, the people that are, you get my point. People kind of migrate to the right people. So you start out with me, establishing who I am, and then being aware of, connecting, not just connecting with anybody, but connecting with the right people that share your same values. That's where you can really synergize. And that's where you get 1 + 1 = 3.
Yes. And then I told you, I was all in this book, and which is so funny because I'm not a book reader. I really don't love to read books. I write books, right? I've written 4 books, but if it's something that really interests me, then I will be all in. So when you were talking about you said the we habits include identifying those in our sphere of influence who have a gift in some specific area, then connecting with them and asking for their insights. This art of connection is one of the most powerful secrets in life. If you're facing a big decision, look around and identify the person you know who is most successful in that area and ask the person exactly how he or she did it. Yeah. That was so profound to me because I'm always talking about the power of association and that proximity is power. But this took it to a different level in terms of just ask.
Yeah. Right? It's the truth. Well, yeah, growing up, going through college and everything, like any young person going to school, it's like, what am I going to do? What's for me? And I really liked real estate. And there's a guy in my community who was really successful, and he did it with real estate. And I thought, what the heck, all he can say is no. I went up to him and I said, hey, how does this work? What is it you do? Explain to me, who knows nothing, about how you become how real estate works and how you think and all of that, if you're willing to do that. Well, he was not only willing to do that, he invited me on his corporate helicopter and started taking me on business trips just for me being a dumb kid, asking him, can you explain this to me? And it opened up a whole new world to me by simply asking. It's the power of the ask.
Yeah.
And so identify people you admire, and more times than not, you're going to find that they're more than happy to share whatever insights that they've got. It's a really big, powerful, wonderful, I don't want to say weapon, tool is the right word, a tool to really excel in life.
Yeah. It's also so scary though, right? Because I think a lot of people, I know for me, asking is a hard thing. But doing the podcast has helped me in that regard because, I saw you, I'm like, yeah, just ask him, see if he'll come on the podcast. Right. And I think that is powerful. And I did, the other day, I did a live in my community. And it was about a 3-letter word, and the 3-letter word was ask. And so, tomorrow, I'll be interviewing someone else for the podcast. And that came from an ask in terms of they reached out to me, but I wanted to do something different. So when I read, the publicist reached out to me and I read, and I was like, I think this could be bigger. Right. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to ask. Right, for what I want in terms of how this could show up. And it's a scary thing to do, but it can reap so many benefits in doing that. And it's a muscle almost that we have to really work at. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And Kelly, and I gave you an example about career oriented, but it works in all kinds of dimensions. I grew up in a little industrial town called Fullerton, California. It's just near Disneyland, Anaheim. And 2 blocks away lived Leo Fender. He invented the electric guitar, and he was just bigger than life, but he's very, very quiet. His wife, on the other hand, was more than eager she snapped up any microphone she could find. She's a very wonderful woman who sadly has passed away. But I got to know her, and I had a big ask. I said, I'm fascinated with the life of Leo Fender. Can we write a book together, about Leo Fender? And she just absolutely. We got together at the restaurant the next Monday. And what do you know? We wrote this book together because I just had enough courage to just ask the big question. And I learned so much, not just about guitars, but about she's the most loving person. And her example of kindness towards everyone was amazing. She's a very deeply spiritual Christian person that I benefit from learning. So just reaching out and asking questions and asking for things is I love that you're doing that yourself too.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying. It's hard. I'm a fiercely independent person, but I realize that, asking those questions and asking people, like you said, who are doing things that you want to know how to do, right, is so vitally important. I was at an event this past week, and it was with some amazing women who are doing phenomenal things in their business, multi millions, hundreds of millions, some of them in their business. And generally, if I'm in a space, like a networking space, I'm not talking to anybody. Where's the exit? I want out of there. I can speak to thousands and thousands of people, but I don't like those types of networking. But I told myself that when I go there, ask questions, talk to these women and see, right? Just have conversations with them. And I ended up having a conversation with a set of twin sisters, and it was so enlightening just to have the conversation with them. We're not in the same business, right? But just listening to them opened a whole a world for me, where I was stuck, right? Before I went there, I was in this place where I just was out of alignment and just stuck on some things that I want to do. And having those conversations like just opened up a whole new world. Like now I have so many notes now, because you hear things, you hear different things. I think that is the power of having conversations with people who are where you want to go and being in a room like that, because the conversations are different.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, I feel the same way. I these networking events, they're almost terrorizing, but then you go and you see somebody standing by themselves and say, well, I'm standing by myself, I'll go say hi. And it's amazing the conversations that come get over it. If we just get past that awkward, initial stage of making a little bit of an effort, often yields big results like you just shared.
Yeah. And so, the me, like you said, that's centered on us. The we is bringing other people into our sphere of influence, which is so important for us to move forward. And then we get to the do phase. So let's talk about do. What is the do phase of all of this framework?
Well, do is getting the work done. I mean, there's it's being productivity. It's purpose is me, and people is we, and purpose or productivity is do. And that's where we look at our money situation and making sure our revenues are greater than costs. Unlike the government, which is always spending more money than it has. That's not a great way to run a business. And all the things that get into productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said do habits, right? So you said do habits include those things that gradually build authentic wealth. And we know that the wealth conversation, right, is a big conversation these days. And what I got from that also is that it takes time. So, as I was at this event with these women, one of the things that struck me was how long they had been in business. And so, while they're wildly successful right now, it took them time to accumulate that wealth and being productive in different areas. And so when we're talking about this do stage in terms of life and in terms of entrepreneurs, what advice would you give to the audience?
Well, I just gave this advice to my daughter and my son-in-law just a couple weeks ago, because we were I've got a place up in Park City, and they're seeing, where I am in life today. And they're just like, how do we get there? And it's like, time out. I'm 62 years old. When I was in my 20s, like you are, I was so poor. And I made so many mistakes where I was leasing BMWs and pretending that I had money I didn't have. Don't make those mistakes. Be authentic, be who you are, but understand the time value of money. If you put a little money away every month and eliminate debt, get away from consumer debt. We don't need, all this junk that society is always trying to sell us. Stay away from that and save a little bit each month. It accumulates in amazing, powerful ways. And then you're able to get the condo in Park City and get this and get that when you get older. But just take a deep breath, enjoy where you are, enjoy your youth, and live cheap and gradually save and understand the profound impact of compounded interest, because you will get authentically wealthy over time if you apply these simple rules.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say compounded interest, and people are like, some people might, the numbers and whatever, and it's not. And I think of compounded interest also not in just the saving of money, but in the doing of the things that it requires for you to get where you need to go. So, right, as we're talking about, creating these frameworks and thinking about it, the do is so, so important, because we can have the mindset, we can have all the people around us, and we can gather all of this amazing information. And if we do nothing, we get nothing.
Beautifully said, Kelly. Yeah, you got to roll up your sleeves and get to work, and fortunately, and the other advice I have on the well, I've got lots of advice and habits in the book, but the other thing is, if you have a job you enjoy, and this, you don't work a day in your life because you're excited to get up. You're excited about doing your thing. My thing is not for everyone. I have a very high tolerance for trauma and disasters, and I love fixing the complex things. Other people have other interests that are probably far more harmonious, and I'm kind of jealous of them. But find something you enjoy, and you don't work. You just enjoy life.
Yeah. Absolutely. But do is the thing, right? Because if you do nothing, you get nothing. So many of us, we gather information. So like you said, go ask the questions, go talk to the people, and we gather all the information and we don't do anything with it. I always tell the women in the community, listen, leverage, and implement.
Oh, I love that. I
You
wish
know,
I was taking notes. I mean,
you can have it. You
do
can
you
use
allow
it.
men to watch your podcast?
Yes, of course. Anybody can watch this podcast. But and you'll get the link to this too. But yeah, it's about, we go to conferences, especially now since we've been in the house, right? We're on every masterclass, every workshop, whatever conference, whatever Zoom, and we're getting so much information. And my book I wrote the other day, this little one. One of the things it's called Unapologetic AF, 34 Ways to Unleash Your Inner Badass. And one of the things that I talk about, I call them my 34 Kellyisms, but one of the things I talk about is the listen, leverage, implement, and how we go to places, conferences or whatever. And while we're there, somebody's telling us the information, even listening to us today. Yeah, oh my God, that sounds great, right? And we're in there, we're like, I can't wait to get home and I'm going to do whatever. And all it is that we write all these things down and they end up in what I call your notebook graveyard, right? We have all these notebooks with all these notes and we're not doing anything. And so, I always try to get them to understand you can't do everything. And so even if you have the conversation and somebody, shares with you, you got to figure out what are 3 things that I learned that I can go do, right? That I can go implement.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's useless.
Well said. It all distills down to, or even one. I mean, in some things,
just one.
Hour and a half was whatever, but there was one thing that was game changing. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely do it. So then we go from, but I want to talk about this before we go to B. One of the things you talked about was the ultimate do habit is to be of service, which is the best buzz of all. And you said that Arthur Ashe said, from what we get, we can make a living. From what we give, however, makes a life. Yeah. I want you to talk about that service. I want you to talk about, and what does service look like? Because I think some people think that service means always doing something for nothing in return or no value or whatever. So what does that mean for you?
Yeah, well, in our firm, I'm the CEO of Landmark Research, and we have all these big disaster cases around the world, and we have a mindset. We have a weekly staff meeting on Wednesdays where we talk about the fact that behind the work we're doing are real people, real lives that have been harmed by these disasters. And so when we get the $1.8 billion verdict or settlement that we got a week or two ago, that's going to, that's going to benefit lots of families and lots of people that were really beat up by this particular trauma, this particular disaster. Well, it's more than just getting a paycheck. It's more than just getting fees from the clients and so forth. I mean, that's all important, essential to run a business. But it goes beyond that to keep our eye on the ball, the fact that we're doing something that makes our communities, makes our world a little bit better. If we all can always think about, how we're benefiting the folks around us, that's far more energizing and far more satisfying than just, grabbing a paycheck and going and watching the football games. So nothing against football, but you get my point, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's about creating impact.
Yeah.
Right. It's really about creating an impact in the world and for other people. And I think that really translates into the B, right? Into the being. So talk to the audience about what the B habits are and what does it mean to be?
Well, are things like, I'm an avid video, I take lots of videos of the kids and lots of pictures, and I want to create a legacy. I want to keep a journal. I want to set goals. I want to, goal setting is a big part of that section of the book. All the things of what we're becoming, because all our time here on planet Earth is finite. At the end of the line, we want to look back with some satisfaction that we've created some kind of legacy, whether it's helping just one person or lots of people like you're doing with your podcast. It's that satisfaction that we it's purpose, people, productivity, and progress. We want to keep the ball rolling so we have progress to look back on and engage in as we live.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that you say in the book, and I've heard this before, is that we are human beings, not human doings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so it is about who, and I ask this question sometimes too, like, who are you being today? Right.
Yeah.
Show up as who you want to be and who
Right.
you expect people
Yeah.
to see you as being. And so one of the other things that you talked about is joy in this whole thing about legacy. You talk about joy, and you said joy is not for the hereafter, it is for the here and now. Joy is the deep feeling of happiness and contentment in knowing that a job is well done and that we made a contribution. We get joy from setting goals, using our time wisely, and establishing our own unique personal legacy. The B habits facilitate this growth. Why is joy so important?
That's why we're here, is to enjoy life. I'm all for an afterlife and enjoying that, whatever that looks like. But for right now, what we have is right in front of us. And when I see my grandchild, my granddaughter, I mean, that's just pure joy. And I see the joy on her face. That's what it's all about. It's not about, I've got as I'm sure you as an attorney, you got to know lots of phenomenally wealthy corporations and people. And my business, the same thing. I've got several clients that are billionaires. Some are very, very happy. Some are not so happy. The thing is, statistically, once you have enough money to pay your basic bills, you're as likely to be as happy as a billionaire. Statistically, that's a study, one of the studies we did that's in the book. And so joy are those who are happy with whatever they've got, is and identifying those things and doing more of them. I get a lot of joy from the beach. That's why I'm 2
I
blocks.
love the water.
I love the and yeah, or a lake or a river. I mean, whatever. But I grew up down here, and so I love the water. Conscientiously identify the things that bring joy. And I would say my granddaughter's at the top of my list right now, but identify them and spend a lot of time engaging with those things so you enjoy life.
Yeah. And two things I want to talk to you about around joy. One is personal to me, and the other is something that I observed. So the other day, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. We were talking about what I'm doing with my business, my speaking, with Ladies Who Leverage, just all of it, right? Because I was in that space of just being unclear. And one of the things that I said to her is like, there's no joy. I said, I'm not feeling the joy. It has just dissipated, right? It has just gone away.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how important that was, right? So in all of the doing, I forgot about the being.
Right.
Right. And so when I read this, I was like, yes. Right.
Yeah.
And so after having that conversation with her, I made a conscious choice that I was going to restructure whatever I'm doing so that there's joy.
I love that.
Because I realized that there was such a draining happening in my life. Because I was just doing, I'm doing things. I'm not being any, I'm a human doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? As opposed to a human being. And it took me back, this is the other part of it. It took me back in 1998. I was a Rotarian ambassador, and I spent 6 weeks in the Philippines. And one of the things that just struck me was how happy the people were and how willing they were to give you things, and they had nothing.
Yeah.
There was this joy, right? That I think we lose sometimes when we have so much, or we're in the doing. Yeah. Rather than in the being. So I thought that was so great. And there was a story in the book that you had too, something I think around giving the kids the pencils.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was going to Africa with my son Stephen, my first trip to Africa, and my dentist assistant was saying, oh, she had been to Africa, and she gave me some advice to take some pencils and pens and things to give to the kids in the village because they would be thrilled with that. And I thought, okay, so I went down to the 5 and dime store and loaded up as much as I could get in my suitcase of pens and pencils, and I'm handing them out I asked the chief, of course, I respected his position there. And he said, sure. And I started handing out little notepads and pens, little packet of pens to every child in the village. And he says, oh, no, 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 just one pen. We don't want to spoil them. And I thought, wow. And these kids were, like you just said, they were so happy. It reminds me when I was on the Bikini Atoll working on the nuclear weapons test sites, the little kids, they saw me going around the beach picking up shells, and they knew that I loved shells. Well, every day at the end of the day, they would all come up to me with, handfuls of shells that they had collected for me. And they were so fun to hang out with. We couldn't even speak the same language, but we could do our thing to communicate. But they knew, they saw the joy I had in collecting the seashells. So they started, joining in on with that. We don't ever want to lose that childhood joy, whatever it is that brings us, some happiness. This is a tough world. And the way we get through it, I think, is to keep our eye on the ball, and that's joy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about the goal setting. So that was one of the other things that I thought about in terms of the being, because, and it's interesting because, and I want you to talk about this, because thinking of the goal setting, I understand that I could see where it's like the being. I would think of it as more of the doing, right? In the do section, like being productive. So I set these goals and I'm going to be productive. So talk about that. Why do you put the goal setting? Why do you think of goal setting as more of the being stage?
Well, because the B stage is productivity. It's moving the ball forward. It's constantly being a little bit better tomorrow than we were today, and being a little bit better today than we were yesterday, that kind of thing. Productivity is where we are. It's getting the job done that we have now. But the B and goal setting is really saying, okay, we're being productive, but tomorrow we want to be more refined in whatever way that looks.
So the vision.
Yeah.
More of the vision. Yeah, I love this.
And then I love this all the way back to me, which is our mindset. It's a circle of life.
Yeah, right. It's 4 cornerstones, but it is a circle.
Yeah. And it really works. What can I say?
Yeah. I love it. Dr. Bell, Randall, I mean, I am so happy that you accepted my invitation to be on the podcast. I love this book. I love this framework. I think that it is, I think if people really listen to it and just think about it every single day, they can see how it can make their life better and make you more intentional, right? About how you are showing up in the world and the things that you're doing every day and the person that you're being every day and who's around you and what are you thinking about, because what we think about shows up in our actions and shows up in how other people think about us. So I want to say thank you for being here with me. And I don't know if you want people to connect with you, but definitely I want you to tell them where you can get the book. Because I want people to get the book, and anything else that if there's something that anything that you're thinking, oh, I wish Kelly had asked me this so I could say this, just, give us these last words of wisdom before we say goodbye.
Well, thanks so much, Kelly. It's been so much fun spending some time talking to you. And it's apparent you get it. Yeah, you get this whole thing we call life. Well, first of all, I'm at drbell.com and I'm easy to reach. And I love these kind of conversations. And the book's on Amazon and all the bookstores. But I'll just leave with a little quick story. There's a woman, her name is Erica Leon, and she turned 100. She lives in LA. She survived the Holocaust, and she lives in a retirement center in LA. And I go there, and a lot of the people there are at the end of their lives, and I hate to say it, but it's true. There's just a lot of regret. There wasn't a lot of purpose. There wasn't a lot of design. There wasn't a lot of joy in their lives, and they're at the end, and there's some regret, and that's profoundly sad. Erica Leon, every time I go to that retirement home, she is the one person and the only person outside in the sunshine in the center courtyard, and she is the most vibrant, alive person, and yet she survived the Holocaust, where she lost pretty much her whole entire family. And I asked her point blank, why is it that you are so fun to hang out with? You've lived a century and you have so much joy. And she says, because I appreciate the clouds because they give contrast to the light, and I focus on the sunshine and the light. and having a purpose. Her purpose, she does beautiful oil paintings from memory of Europe, where she grew up as a little girl, and they're so vibrant. And she learned how to paint at the age of 70. So no matter where we are in life, there's time to adapt these principles of me, we, do, be, and really land on something really meaningful and beautiful, like Erica did.
That's awesome. Awesome. And the other stories in the book are so impactful. So please, everyone, go and get Dr. Bell's book, Me, We, Do, Be. It is an absolute amazing framework to just live life and just think about who you are and who you're being in this world. And so I want to thank everyone for joining us today on the Ladies Who Leverage podcast. I want to remind you to subscribe to the podcast, to listen, to share, to take notes, but also to do the work, to implement what it is that you're hearing and learning from all of these amazing guests that we have on the podcast. And if you're a female entrepreneur and you're looking for a community of women that you can connect with, share, create ideas, and also to build a thriving business, I want to invite you to join us at Ladies Who Leverage. You can go to ladieswholeverage.com and find out more about us and be in the community. The women in there are amazing. They are going to inspire you, motivate you, uplift you. But yes, they will also hold you accountable for doing that work. So again, thank you so much. Our episodes drop every Monday at 9 a.m. Please share, please subscribe. And as I always tell the women and Ladies Who Leverage, go unleash your badassery and live life unapologetically AF. Until next time, take care. Thanks for joining us. This podcast is brought to you by Lady Lawyer Media. If you're a badass woman who's ready to take action to live life unapologetically AF, then you need to join our global community on Facebook, Ladies Who Leverage. And remember to subscribe to our podcast. And until next time, let's collabosource, strategize, and monetize.